Marcus Webb stepped off the transport shuttle and into the massive hangar of Station Terminus 7. His boots clicked against the metal floor as he adjusted the strap of his duffel bag. Around him, dozens of other cadets moved through the bay, but none of them looked remotely human. A creature that stood nearly 8 feet tall walked past him. Its skin was covered in thick gray scales that looked like natural armor. The being's arms were as thick as Marcus's entire torso, and its eyes glowed with an orange light. That was a Krathak, one of the galaxy's most feared warrior species. The creature glanced down at Marcus and snorted, a sound that seemed almost like laughter. Marcus kept his face blank and continued walking. He had expected this. 3 months ago, humanity had been invited to send candidates to the Galactic Coalition's premier military academy. It was an honor, they said, a sign that humanity was being taken seriously. Marcus had scored high enough on the entrance exams to be selected as one of only 3 humans accepted this cycle. His mother had cried with pride. His father had shaken his hand and called him the future of their species. Now, standing in this hangar surrounded by aliens who looked like they could crush him without effort, Marcus wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. "You are the human?" a voice asked. Marcus turned to see another alien, this one shorter but wider. Its body was encased in what looked like natural bone plates overlapping like ancient samurai armor. A Voran, Marcus recognized from his studies. They came from a high-gravity world and were known for their incredible defensive capabilities. "I am," Marcus replied. "Cadet Marcus Webb." The Voran's eyes, which were set deep within its armored face, studied him for a long moment. "You are very small and soft. Where is your natural protection?" "I don't have any," Marcus said simply. The Voran made a clicking sound that might have been concern or might have been disapproval. "Then you will not last long here. Perhaps they will assign you to medical or logistics. A shame they accepted you at all." The creature walked away before Marcus could respond. Marcus exhaled slowly and continued toward the registration area. This was going to be a long year. The first week was a series of medical examinations and baseline assessments. Marcus met the other 2 humans during the medical processing. Chen was a stocky woman from Beijing who had trained in mixed martial arts since childhood. Rodriguez was a tall, lean man from Argentina who had been a marathon runner before applying to the academy. They were both more physically impressive than Marcus, who had always been described as average in every way. "They keep looking at us like we're made of glass," Chen muttered as they waited in line for the strength assessment. Ahead of them, a Krathak cadet was lifting weights that would have crushed a human instantly. The machine's display showed numbers that seemed impossible. "We are fragile compared to them," Rodriguez pointed out. He gestured at the Krathak. "That guy could probably snap all 3 of us in half without breaking a sweat." Marcus watched the display carefully. The Krathak lifted the massive weight 10 times, then stepped back, breathing hard. The instructor, a grizzled Voran with scars across his armor plating, marked something on his datapad and called the next cadet. When Marcus's turn came, he approached the machine and set it to what the instructor indicated was the minimum standard for the academy. It was heavy, much heavier than anything Marcus had lifted before, but he managed it. Barely. He completed 8 repetitions before his arms began to shake. On the 10th rep, he almost dropped the weight. The instructor's face showed clear disapproval. "Barely acceptable. Next." The speed tests were worse. The Sethri, a species that looked like humanoid lizards with sleek, muscular builds, moved so fast they were almost blurs. Marcus ran the course as fast as he could, but his time was in the bottom 10% of all cadets. The durability assessment was the most humiliating. It involved controlled impacts to test how much force a cadet could withstand. The Voran cadets took strikes that would have killed Marcus. The Krathak barely seemed to notice the impacts at all. When Marcus took his turn, the machine had to be set to its lowest setting. Even then, he ended up with bruises that would last for days. By the end of the first week, Marcus had heard the whispers. The other cadets called him the Fragile One in their various languages. The instructors discussed his reassignment to non-combat roles. Even the medical staff seemed worried about his ability to survive the training program. Only one test remained before the first week ended: the endurance assessment. The test was simple in concept. Cadets would run on a machine that measured their stamina. The machine would gradually increase in difficulty, adding incline and resistance. Most species had clear limits based on their biology. The Krathak, with their massive muscles and warrior culture, could maintain intense effort for about 45 minutes before their bodies demanded rest. The Voreen, built for defense rather than sustained activity, typically lasted 30 minutes. The Sethri, designed for explosive speed, tired quickly in endurance scenarios and usually stopped around 20 minutes. The instructor explained the test and added, "You will run until your body tells you to stop. Do not push beyond safety. We are measuring your natural limits, not your courage." Marcus stepped onto the machine when his name was called. Around him, other cadets used identical machines, their tests staggered so the medical staff could monitor everyone. He started at a comfortable jog as the machine hummed to life beneath his feet. The first 10 minutes were easy. Marcus focused on his breathing, keeping it steady and controlled. The machine's incline increased gradually. His legs began to feel the burn, but it was manageable. At 15 minutes, a Sethri cadet 2 machines over stepped off, breathing hard but satisfied. The instructor marked the time and nodded approval. At 20 minutes, Marcus's shirt was soaked with sweat. His legs ached. The incline was steep now, and the resistance made every step feel like he was running through sand. But he had run longer than this before. Back on Earth, he had trained for a marathon by running in the mountains near his home. This was hard, but it was not impossible. At 30 minutes, the Voran cadets began stepping off their machines one by one. They had reached their natural limits. The instructors nodded and made notes. "Good performance," their expressions said. Exactly as expected, Marcus kept running. The pain in his legs had spread to his entire body now. Every breath felt like fire in his lungs. Sweat dripped into his eyes. But the machine was still moving, and Marcus had learned long ago that pain was just information. It told him he was working hard. It did not tell him to stop. At 45 minutes, the last Krathak stepped off his machine. The massive warrior was breathing hard, his scaled chest heaving with effort. He had pushed himself to his absolute limit and beyond. The instructors congratulated him. It was an excellent time. Marcus was still running. He was alone on the machines now. Every cadet in the facility had stopped to watch. The instructors gathered around his machine, checking the monitors with expressions of confusion. "His heart rate is elevated but stable," one medic reported. "Muscle fatigue indicators are high but not critical. He should have stopped by now." "Tell him to stop," another instructor said. "He has proven his point." But no one told Marcus to stop. They just watched. And Marcus kept running because no one had told him it was time to quit. And his body, despite the pain and exhaustion, was still capable of movement. At 60 minutes, an hour of continuous running uphill against resistance, the head instructor finally stepped forward. "Cadet Webb," he said firmly, "you may stop. The test is complete." Marcus slowed the machine gradually and stepped off. His legs shook and he had to grip the handrail to stay upright. His vision was blurry with sweat and fatigue. But he was standing. The room was completely silent. Every cadet, every instructor, every staff member stared at him with expressions he could not quite read. Not respect yet. Something else. Surprise, maybe. Or the first hint of uncertainty about what they had assumed humans were. Marcus wiped his face with his shirt and looked up at the instructor. "What was my time, sir?" The instructor looked at his datapad, then back at Marcus. 60 minutes and 12 seconds, Cadet Webb. That is highly unusual for a species with your apparent physical capabilities." "Yes, sir," Marcus said quietly. "May I go to my quarters now?" "Dismissed, Cadet." Marcus walked out of the assessment center on shaking legs. Behind him, the whispers had already started. But this time they sounded different. Less like mockery, more like confusion. In his small quarters that night, Marcus collapsed onto his bunk and stared at the ceiling. His entire body ached in ways he had never experienced before. Tomorrow would bring more tests, more assessments, more opportunities for the other cadets to prove their superiority. But tonight, for the first time since arriving at Terminus 7, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. They thought he was fragile. They thought he was weak. They thought he did not belong here. Maybe they were right about some of that. He was not as strong as a Krathak. He was not as fast as a Sethri. He was not as durable as a Voran, but he was human. And humans had not become the dominant species on Earth by being the strongest or the fastest or the toughest. They had survived by being too stubborn to quit, when every sensible creature would have given up. 3 weeks into training, Marcus had settled into a routine that felt almost comfortable. Wake before dawn, physical conditioning, tactical classes, weapons training, more physical conditioning, and finally collapse into his bunk at night. Every day was designed to push cadets to their limits and beyond. The other cadets still treated Marcus with a mixture of dismissal and confusion. The dismissal came from his continued poor performance in strength and speed drills. The confusion came from his performance in everything else. In the battle simulations, Marcus rarely won through direct confrontation, but he won more often than he should. He studied his opponents, learned their patterns, and adapted his tactics to exploit their weaknesses. "You fight like a coward," a Krathak named Droken told him after one simulation. There was no malice in his voice, just honest assessment. "You hide, you retreat, you strike only when the enemy is distracted. There is no honor in your methods," Marcus shrugged. "I fight to win. Honor is for people who can afford it." Drokan's orange eyes studied Marcus for a long moment. "On my world, such words would demand a challenge. But I think you already know you would lose such a challenge." "I do know," Marcus agreed. "That's why I would never accept one." Something that might have been respect flickered across Drokan's face. "You are honest about your weakness. Perhaps there is honor in that." The Krathak walked away, leaving Marcus to wonder if he had just made a friend or an enemy. The real test came on the 31st day of training. Commander Thexar, the Academy's senior tactical instructor and a Vorin whose armor bore the scars of 100 battles, announced a special exercise. A 72-hour survival course in the wilderness region of Terminus 7's dark side, where the station's rotation kept the land in perpetual night and freezing temperatures. "You will be dropped individually in different locations," Thexar explained to the assembled cadets. "Your objective is to reach the extraction point 100 kilometers from your drop zone. You will have minimal supplies, standard environmental suits, and an emergency beacon. If you activate the beacon, you fail the exercise. If you fail to reach extraction within 72 hours, you fail the exercise." Questions. Chen raised her hand. "What happens if someone gets seriously injured?" "Activate your beacon," Thexar said flatly. "We will extract you, and you will fail." The drops happened at night, which in the dark zone meant even less visibility than usual. Marcus watched through the transport's window as his fellow cadets were deposited one by one across the frozen landscape. When his turn came, he stepped out into darkness so complete it felt solid. His environmental suit kept him warm, but barely. The temperature outside was 40 degrees below zero. The suit's heads-up display showed his position and the direction to the extraction point. 100 kilometers through terrain that sensors indicated was rocky, uneven, and dotted with crevasses that could swallow a careless traveler. Marcus checked his supplies. 3 days of rations, water for 2 days with recycling, a basic medical kit, a handheld light, and a survival knife. Not much, but enough. He oriented himself and started walking. The first day was manageable. Marcus moved carefully, testing the ground before committing his weight. He rationed his water and ate only enough to keep his energy stable. When his suit's power indicator showed 20% remaining, he found a depression in the rocks and settled in to conserve energy, while the suit's solar panels recharged slowly in the dim starlight. The second day was harder. Marcus had covered 60 kilometers, but the terrain had grown rougher. Twice he had to detour around impassable crevasses, adding kilometers to his journey. His water was running low despite the recycling system. His legs ached from the constant climbing and descending, but he kept moving. On the second night, disaster struck. While climbing down a rocky slope, his foot slipped on a patch of ice. Marcus fell hard, tumbling down the incline before slamming into a boulder. His suit's integrity warning flashed red. There was a crack in the left leg seal, not big enough to cause immediate danger, but enough to let the cold in and drain the suit's power trying to compensate. Marcus assessed the damage with hands that were starting to shake from more than just the cold. He used his emergency repair tape to seal the crack, but the suit's power was now draining twice as fast as before. He would have to move faster or risk freezing before he reached extraction. He started moving again, ignoring the pain in his side where he had hit the boulder, probably cracked a rib. His mind supplied helpfully. Nothing to do about it now except keep going. The third day was a blur of pain and exhaustion. Marcus's water ran out completely. His rations were gone. The suit's power dropped to 5%, then 3%. The cold was creeping in through the damaged seal, turning his left leg numb. Every step was agony. Every breath felt like ice in his lungs. But Marcus kept walking. He had learned something about himself during the years of training on Earth, during the months of preparation for this academy, during the endless drills and exercises. When his body screamed at him to stop, there was something in his mind that simply refused. Not bravery exactly, more like a stubborn inability to accept defeat while he was still capable of movement. At hour 69, 11 hours before the deadline, Marcus crested a ridge and saw the extraction point lights in the distance. 3 kilometers away. He could make it. At hour 71, Marcus stumbled into the extraction zone. His suit's power was at 0. His left leg had no feeling at all. His vision was blurry from dehydration and exhaustion, but he was there. Commander Thexar stood at the command post surrounded by other instructors. They stared as Marcus approached. "Cadet Webb," Thexar said, his voice carefully neutral. "You are the last to arrive." "Yes, sir," Marcus managed. His voice was hoarse from thirst. "The first cadet arrived 23 hours ago," Thexar continued. "That was Droken. He completed the course in excellent time using the standard Krathak approach. Direct route, maximum speed, overwhelming any obstacles through strength. Most cadets arrived within 36 hours using similar species-specific approaches." Marcus nodded. He was not surprised. They were all stronger and faster than him. Of course they finished first. "There have been 11 failures," Thexar said. 3 Sethri cadets who underestimated the cold and activated their beacons when their speed-adapted bodies began to shut down. 5 Voran cadets whose heavy armor and defensive builds proved poor for long-distance travel in low temperatures. 2 Krathak who sustained injuries and chose to beacon out rather than risk permanent damage. And 1 human, Rodriguez, whose suit failed completely at the 40-hour mark. He made the intelligent decision to activate his beacon before freezing to death. "And Chen, sir?" Marcus asked. "Cadet Chen arrived at hour 52. Excellent performance." Thexar stepped closer, studying Marcus with his deep-set eyes. "You are injured. Your suit is damaged. You have been without water or food for over 20 hours. Medical scans indicate you have a fractured rib, severe dehydration, and early-stage hypothermia in your left leg. Yet you did not activate your beacon." "No, sir." "Why not?" Marcus thought about that. "Because I could still walk, sir." Thexar was silent for a long moment. Around them, other instructors had gathered, listening. Droken stood among them, his orange eyes fixed on Marcus. "Your injuries could have become life-threatening," Thexar finally said. "You risked permanent damage for the sake of completing a training exercise." "Yes, sir." Marcus swayed slightly on his feet. The world was starting to tilt in interesting ways. "That was foolish, Cadet Webb." "Yes, sir. But it was also remarkable." Thexar gestured to the medical team. "Get him to the medical bay. Full treatment." As the medics moved forward to support Marcus, Thexar added quietly, "We need to review our assessment protocols for humans. Clearly, our understanding of your species' capabilities is incomplete." Marcus spent the next 3 days in the medical bay. The medical staff, who had been worried about his fragility when he first arrived, now seemed concerned for different reasons. They kept running tests and consulting with each other in low voices. "Your cellular regeneration is remarkable," one of the doctors, a insectoid being whose name Marcus could not pronounce, told him. "The fracture is already beginning to heal. Most species would require weeks for such an injury. You will be cleared for duty in 5 days. Is that unusual?" Marcus asked. The doctor's antennae twitched in what might have been confusion or concern. "Cadet Webb, most species in the galaxy have evolved specific advantages. Strength, speed, armor, specialized senses. Your species seems to have evolved a general resilience instead. Your bodies are fragile, yes, but they repair quickly. You can function through injuries that would incapacitate others. Your endurance exceeds any species we have tested. It is as if you were designed to survive in multiple hostile environments rather than excel in one specific one." "Earth is a hostile environment," Marcus said simply. "We had to adapt to everything because we could not specialize for anything." "Yes," the doctor said slowly. "We are beginning to understand that. Your planet's classification as a Level 9 death world was in our files, but the implications were not fully appreciated. You are a death world species, Cadet Webb. That makes you very dangerous in ways we did not anticipate." The transport ship shuddered as it entered Colony 7 Delta's atmosphere. Marcus checked his rifle for the 3rd time, making sure the magazine was properly seated and the safety was engaged. Around him, the other cadets performed their own pre-combat rituals. Some were silent and focused, Others chatted nervously. A few of the Krathak were chanting what sounded like war prayers. Chen sat across from Marcus, her face composed but pale. "I joined the academy to serve humanity," she said quietly. "To make my family proud. I never really thought about what it would mean to actually fight." "Me neither," Marcus admitted. "Not really. Training is different." "Yeah." Chen checked her sidearm, then looked at Marcus again. "Stay alive, okay? Earth needs all three of us to make it home." Rodriguez, seated next to Chen, nodded agreement. "We stick together. We watch each other's backs." Marcus was about to respond when Commander Thexar's voice boomed through the transport. "Listen up. We are inserting directly into the colony's central district. Initial reports indicate the attackers have control of the outer zones and are pushing toward the central defensive position where the colonists have fortified. Our objective is to reinforce the colonists and hold until the fleet arrives. Remember your training, follow your squad leaders, and stay alive. Touchdown in 90 seconds. The transport bay doors opened and Marcus felt his stomach drop as the ship descended rapidly. Through the opening, he could see the colony below. Smoke rose from several buildings. Weapons fire lit up the growing darkness. It looked like a war zone because it was a war zone. The transport touched down hard in what had been a public plaza. The ramp dropped and Thexar was already moving, his armored bulk leading the way. "Squads, form up. Blue squad, take the eastern approach. Gold squad, western. Red squad, you are with me on center. Move." Marcus was in red squad, along with Droken, Chen, and 6 other cadets. They followed Thexar into the streets of the colony, weapons ready. The sound of combat grew louder. Plasma fire crackled through the air. Something exploded in the distance, sending a column of smoke into the sky. They rounded a corner and found the colonists' defensive position. It was a hastily built barricade of overturned vehicles and prefab walls. Behind it, a mixture of militia fighters and civilians with rifles exchanged fire with attackers. Marcus could not yet see. The militia commander, a human woman with a bloody bandage around her head, saw Thexar and shouted, "About damn time! They have us pinned from 3 sides!" Thexar assessed the situation with quick professional efficiency. Red squad reinforced the north barricade. Blue and gold are coming around to cover the flanks. We hold here. Marcus followed Drokan and the others to the north barricade. He took a position behind a section of wall and risked a glance over the top. What he saw made his breath catch. The attackers were not poorly armed pirates. They wore military-grade armor, moved with professional coordination, and carried weapons that looked like they belonged in a regular army's arsenal. "Contact," someone shouted, and the barricade erupted with return fire. Marcus sighted on a target, a figure in black armor advancing behind cover, and squeezed the trigger. His rifle bucked against his shoulder. The target did not go down. The armor had taken the hit. "Aim for joints and seams," Thexar bellowed. "Their armor is heavy-grade. Center mass shots are not effective." Marcus adjusted his aim and fired again. This time his target stumbled. Not dead, but wounded. Someone else's shot finished the job. The battle became a blur of noise and violence. Marcus fired, reloaded, fired again. Beside him, Droken roared challenges in his own language while laying down suppressing fire. Chen moved with controlled precision, each shot carefully placed. For 20 minutes they held the barricade. The attackers probed for weaknesses but could not break through. Then something changed. The enemy fire intensified, became more focused on the north barricade. Marcus saw why and his blood went cold. A group of attackers was moving along a building side, using it for cover, trying to flank the barricade. "They are trying to get around us," Marcus shouted to Droken. "I see them." The Krathak shifted his fire, but there were too many targets. The flanking group was going to succeed unless someone stopped them. Marcus made a decision he did not fully think through. "Cover me!" He vaulted over the barricade and sprinted toward a closer position, a burned-out vehicle that would give him a better angle on the flankers. He heard Chen shout his name, heard Drokan curse in his own language, but he was already committed. He slid behind the vehicle as plasma fire scorched the ground where he had just been. From this angle, he had a clear shot at the flankers. Marcus fired 3 times in rapid succession. One attacker went down. The others scattered, their advance disrupted. But now Marcus was exposed, cut off from the barricade with enemies on multiple sides. "Webb, fall back." Thexar's voice crackled over the comm. "That is an order." Marcus looked back at the barricade. It was 20 meters away across open ground. The enemy had already spotted him. If he ran, They would cut him down before he made it halfway. "Cannot comply, sir." "I am pinned." "Damn it!" Thexar started organizing a covering fire, but Marcus could see it would not be enough. There were too many angles, too much open space. Then the situation got worse. 3 more attackers came around the corner of a building, moving fast. They saw Marcus and opened fire. He ducked behind the vehicle, but he could hear their coordinated movements. They were flanking his position, using proper small unit tactics. In seconds, they would have him in a crossfire. Marcus's mind raced through options. He could not hold this position. He could not retreat. He could not win a direct fight against 3 armored opponents. But the building they had come around had a doorway, and the door was open. A desperate plan formed. He grabbed a flash grenade from his belt, pulled the pin, and threw it toward the approaching attackers. Then, while they were reacting to the grenade, Marcus sprinted not toward the barricade but toward the building. The grenade detonated behind him. He heard shouts of confusion. Then he was through the doorway and into the building's interior. It was dark inside. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow. Marcus moved quickly but carefully, knowing the 3 attackers would follow him. Good. In here, their armor and numbers meant less. In here, the fight would be on different terms. He heard them enter behind him, heard their leader issuing orders in a language Marcus did not recognize. They were splitting up to search the building, also good. Marcus found a side room and waited, controlling his breathing, listening. Footsteps approached. Heavy armored footsteps. One of the attackers was coming down the corridor alone. Marcus waited until the figure passed his hiding spot, then moved. He did not use his rifle. Too loud, and the armor would stop the shot anyway. Instead, he used his knife. The attacker did not die quietly. The struggle lasted several seconds, desperate and brutal. Marcus found the weak points in the armor, the joints at the neck and under the arm. When it was over, Marcus was breathing hard and his hands were shaking. He had just killed someone, not in a training simulation, not in a distant, sanitized way. He had killed them up close with a knife, feeling their body go limp. He did not have time to process it. The other 2 attackers had heard the commotion and were converging on his position. Marcus grabbed the dead attacker's sidearm, a weapon he did not recognize but which seemed straightforward enough. He moved to a new position, using the building's layout to his advantage. The next attacker came around a corner cautiously, weapon raised. Marcus shot him twice. The armor held against the first shot but cracked on the second. The attacker went down. 2 down, 1 to go, but the last attacker was smarter or more experienced. Marcus heard movement on the floor above him. They were using the building's multiple levels, trying to get above him for a better angle. Marcus could not let that happen. He moved toward the stairs, every nerve alert. They met on the stairwell. The attacker had the high ground and better armor. Marcus had desperation and no other choice. The fight was chaos. Marcus threw himself to the side as the attacker fired, the plasma shot missing by inches. He returned fire while rolling, hitting the attacker's leg. The figure stumbled and Marcus charged up the stairs. What followed was not elegant. It was a savage, brutal fight in a confined space. The attacker was stronger and better protected. Marcus was faster in the tight quarters and more willing to take risks. He used the stairs themselves as weapons, pushing the attacker backward using the environment. When his borrowed weapon ran out of ammunition, he used it as a club. When that broke, he went back to his knife. By the time it was over, Marcus was covered in blood. Some of it was his own, most was not. He stood in the stairwell, breathing hard, and realized his hands had stopped shaking. He felt strange. Not good exactly, but calm, focused, like part of his mind had accepted what he was doing and stopped questioning it. "Webb, respond." Thexar's voice came over the comm, urgent. "What is your status?" Marcus keyed his comm with a bloody hand. 3 hostiles down, sir. I am mobile but wounded. Minor injuries." There was a pause. 3 hostiles? You took down 3 of them alone?" "Yes, sir." Marcus looked at the bodies and felt nothing. Should he feel something? Probably. But right now, survival mattered more than emotions. The journey back to Station Terminus 7 was quiet. The cadets who had survived the battle at Colony 7 Delta sat in the transport, each processing what they had experienced in their own way. Some stared at nothing. Others cleaned their weapons with mechanical repetition. A few slept, exhausted beyond the ability to stay awake. Marcus sat near the back, watching the stars through the viewport. His wounds ached despite the painkillers the medics had given him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the stairwell fight, the desperate moments where survival had been measured in split-second decisions. He had killed 3 people that day. The number felt both too large and somehow insufficient to capture what had actually happened. Drokan sat down heavily next to him. The Krathik's armor was scorched and dented from the battle. "You are not celebrating with the others," he observed. "Do not feel much like celebrating," Marcus said. "Why not? You fought with great skill. You saved many lives. Among my people, such actions would earn songs and honor." Marcus considered that. "Maybe that is the difference. I did not fight for honor or glory. I fought because the alternative was dying or letting others die. There is nothing worth celebrating about that. It just is what it is." Drokan was silent for a long moment. "I have been thinking about what happened in that building. The way you fought. It was not like anything I have seen before. You used the environment. You exploited every weakness. You did not give your enemies any chance to recover or regroup. It was efficient. It was brutal. It was, and I mean this with respect, terrifying." "Sorry," Marcus said quietly. "Do not apologize. I am beginning to understand something about your species." Drokan leaned back against the transport wall. "Krathak are warriors. We are born into a culture of honor and combat. We train from childhood to fight with strength and courage. Fighting is who we are. But humans, you are not warriors by nature, are you? You are survivors, and that makes you more dangerous than any warrior could be." Marcus thought about that assessment. Maybe. On Earth, humans were not the strongest species. Not the fastest. Not the toughest. But we survived because we were smart enough and stubborn enough to outlast everything else. We are predators, but we are also prey. We remember what it was like to be hunted. That shapes how we think about survival. "That is why you fight with no honor," Drokan said. It was not a criticism, just a statement. Honor is a luxury. Survival is not. Yeah, that is about right. When they arrived at Terminus 7, Commander Thexar immediately called Marcus and the other human cadets to a private debriefing. They sat in a small conference room while Thexar reviewed footage from their helmet cameras. Marcus watched himself fight in the building. On the screen, removed from the immediate danger, it looked even more savage than it had felt at the time. Thexar paused the footage on a frame showing Marcus with his knife, taking down the first attacker. "This is not standard coalition combat doctrine," he said flatly. "This is close-quarters elimination. This is predator behavior." "Yes, sir," Marcus agreed. There was no point denying what the footage clearly showed. "Do they teach this in human military training?" "Some of it, sir. But mostly this is just instinct. When you are in immediate danger with no way out, human instincts take over. We do what we need to do to survive." Thexar looked at Chen and Rodriguez. "Did you experience similar reactions during combat?" Chen nodded slowly. "When things got desperate, I stopped thinking about technique or doctrine. I just reacted. Everything became very simple. Stay alive, protect my squad, eliminate threats. In that order," Rodriguez added. "It was like something switched on in my brain. Fear was still there, but it did not stop me. It made me focus, made me faster, made me willing to do things I never would have considered before." Thexar absorbed this information with visible concern. The Galactic Coalition has trained warriors from 100 species. Each species has different strengths, different approaches to combat. But this is something new. You do not fight to win glory or honor. You do not fight according to established codes of conduct. You fight with pure survival instinct. That makes you unpredictable, dangerous, effective in ways that are difficult to plan for or against. "Is that a problem, sir?" Marcus asked. "I do not know yet," Thexar admitted, "but it is something we need to understand better. The intelligence reports from the battle are disturbing. The enemy force that attacked Colony 7 Delta was not random pirates. They were advanced scouts for the Zelak supremacy, a hostile power that has been testing coalition defenses. They were professional soldiers with excellent equipment and training. They should have overwhelmed the colony easily, but they did not," Chen said. "No, they did not. And according to communications we intercepted, one of the reasons they retreated was because of human involvement. Specifically, because of footage showing how humans fight in close quarters. The Zelak commander reportedly ordered immediate withdrawal when he identified humans among the defenders." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "They retreated because of us? 3 cadets? Not because of your numbers. Because of what you represent. Thexar pulled up a document on the display. This is a Zalak intelligence assessment. It classifies humanity as a death world species and recommends avoiding direct engagement whenever possible. They fear you, not your strength or your technology. They fear your refusal to accept defeat. Rodriguez leaned forward, reading the document. They call us persistence predators. They say humans will continue fighting through injuries that would kill most species. They say we heal impossibly fast and adapt to new situations with disturbing efficiency. They are treating us like we are monsters. From their perspective, you are, Thexar said bluntly. Most species in the galaxy evolved on relatively stable worlds. They develop specific advantages for specific environments. But Earth is classified as a Category 9 death world. Everything on your planet is hostile. The weather, the diseases, the predators, even the plant life. Humans evolved to survive in that environment. You are not specialist. You are the ultimate generalists. You can survive almost anywhere and fight under almost any conditions. Is that why you really recruited humans? Marcus asked. Not to give humanity a seat at the table, but because you needed death world species to handle situations other species could not. Thexar did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was careful. The Coalition's reasons for recruiting humanity are complex. But yes, your species' unique capabilities were a significant factor. The galaxy is not entirely peaceful. There are threats that require unconventional approaches, like the Zalak supremacy, Chen said. Yes, the Zalak are expansionist and aggressive. They have superior numbers and excellent military technology. Traditional coalition forces have struggled against them. We needed something different, something unpredictable. Thexar looked at each of them in turn. We needed humans. But I do not think we truly understood what that meant until now. Over the following weeks, Marcus noticed changes in how he was treated. The dismissive attitudes from other cadets disappeared entirely. Now they watched him with wary respect. Some avoided him. Others, like Droken, sought him out to understand human combat psychology better. The instructors revised their training methods for human cadets. They stopped trying to make humans fight like other species, and instead focused on leveraging human advantages, endurance training, adaptability drills, scenarios that required creative problem-solving under extreme stress. Marcus excelled in the new training. So did Chen and Rodriguez. It turned out that when you stopped trying to make humans into something they were not, and instead let them be what they were, they performed remarkably well. One evening, Marcus was called to Commander Thexar's office. The Voran sat behind a desk covered in data pads and tactical displays. He gestured for Marcus to sit. I have been reviewing your performance since you arrived at this academy. Your initial assessments were poor. Bottom quartile in strength and speed, concerning marks on durability. By every traditional metric, you should have washed out in the first month. Yes, sir. But you did not wash out. Instead, you have become one of the most effective cadets in your class. Not because you are strong or fast, but because you are human. Because you bring capabilities that no other species can match. Thexar paused. There is a situation developing. Intelligence suggests the Zalak are planning a major offensive against Outpost Kepler 9, a strategic depot near human space. If they take that outpost, they will have a direct route into Coalition core worlds. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. When is this happening, sir?
Intelligence estimates within the next 72 hours.
The nearest fleet is 3 days away. Kepler 9 has minimal defenses. They will not hold without reinforcement. And you want to send cadets again, Marcus said. Not want, need. You understand the difference. Thexar's expression was grim. The Zalak know about humans now. They know you are dangerous. But they do not fully understand how dangerous. That gives us a tactical advantage, but only if we use it quickly. After this engagement, they will adapt their strategies. They will develop counters. This may be our only chance to hit them before they are prepared for human combat tactics. How many cadets? Marcus asked. The transport ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 9 system. Through the viewports, Marcus could see the outpost in the distance. It looked small against the backdrop of space, but tactical displays showed it was a massive facility. Supply depot, refueling station, and strategic stronghold all in one. It was also completely surrounded by Zalak ships. Attention all cadets, Commander Thexar's voice came over the comm system. Intelligence has confirmed the Zalak moved faster than anticipated. They have already begun their assault on Kepler 9. The outpost's defenses are holding, but they estimate less than 6 hours before the walls are breached. We do not have 6 hours to plan. We attack immediately. Marcus sat with the other human cadets in a separate briefing room. There were 8 of them total, including Chen and Rodriguez. The rest were humans who had joined the academy in previous cycles, already more experienced than Marcus's group. Their team leader was a woman named Sarah Kimura, a third-year cadet who had survived multiple combat deployments. "Listen carefully," Kimura said, her voice calm despite the situation. "The main force will engage the Zelak fleet and ground forces directly. That will draw their attention and their resources. While they are distracted, we infiltrate the outpost through the maintenance tunnels that connect to the external docking ports. The Zelak have secured the main entrances, but intelligence indicates they have not yet fully mapped the tunnel system." "What is our objective once we are inside?" Rodriguez asked. "Chaos," Kimura said simply. "The Zelak rely on coordination and control. They have command posts, communication hubs, power distribution centers. We hit everything we can reach. We make them think they are under attack from inside their own perimeter. We force them to pull resources away from the main assault to deal with us. We make them afraid." 8 people against an entire invasion force," Chen said quietly. "Those are terrible odds." "Yes," Kimura agreed. "But we are human. Terrible odds are kind of our specialty." She smiled, and there was something fierce in that expression. "The Zelak have studied us. They know we are dangerous, but they have never fought humans who were specifically trying to scare them. Today they learn what a Deathworld species can do when we stop playing nice." The insertion was terrifying. Their small ship had to navigate through a battlefield, dodging weapons fire from both sides to reach the external docking port that connected to the maintenance tunnels. Twice proximity alarms screamed warnings about near misses, but their pilot, a reckless Sethri named Vex who apparently had no sense of self-preservation, got them to the port intact. The maintenance tunnels were dark, cramped, and never meant for combat operations. They crawled through sections barely wide enough for a single person, navigated through areas where environmental controls had failed, and the air was thin and cold, and moved in absolute silence to avoid detection. Marcus lost track of time in those tunnels. It might have been an hour. It might have been 3. All he knew was that every muscle ached from the confined movement, his lungs burned from the bad air, and his nerves were stretched tight waiting for the moment when they would be discovered. They were not discovered. The Zelak had assumed the tunnels were too difficult to navigate under combat conditions. They had not accounted for humans who had evolved to persist through impossible conditions. Kimura held up a fist, signaling a halt. She consulted her tactical display, then pointed at a junction ahead. "We split here. Team 1, you are with me. We are hitting the western command post. Team 2, Marcus leads. You take the eastern communication hub. Team 3, Chen has point. You are on the central power distribution. Cause as much damage as you can, but stay mobile. Do not hold positions. Hit and move. We have 4 hours until extraction. Make every minute count." Marcus found himself leading Rodriguez and a cadet named Jackson, a quiet man from Australia who had barely spoken during the entire journey. They moved through the tunnels toward their objective, guided by Kimura's intelligence data. The communication hub was deep inside the Zelak perimeter, protected by what the data suggested were minimal guards. After all, who would be crazy enough to attack it from inside their own defensive line? Humans. That was who. They emerged from the tunnel into a service corridor. The hub was just ahead, behind a single guarded door. 2 Zelak soldiers stood watch, their attention focused outward toward the main battle. They never saw the humans coming. Marcus signaled Rodriguez and Jackson. They moved in perfect silence, years of training taking over. The guards went down quickly, quietly. No alarms, no alerts. Just 2 bodies that would not be found for several minutes. Inside the communication hub, Marcus found a room full of equipment he barely understood. But he did not need to understand it. He just needed to destroy it. They planted explosives on every major system, set the timers for 3 minutes, and retreated back to the corridor. The explosion was muffled by the building structure, but Marcus felt it through the floor. Across the facility, he knew the Zelak were suddenly dealing with disrupted communications. Their carefully coordinated assault was becoming chaotic. "One down," Jackson said with grim satisfaction. "What is next?" Marcus consulted his tactical display. There is a supply depot 2 corridors west. Let us see how well they fight when their ammunition runs low. For the next 3 hours, Marcus's team moved through the facility like ghosts. They hit supply points, power junctions, and troop staging areas. They avoided direct confrontation when possible, but when cornered, they fought with the brutal efficiency that was becoming the human trademark. Quick, violent, decisive, no mercy, no hesitation. Marcus lost count of how many Zelak they encountered. Some they killed, some they just wounded and left, knowing the screams would demoralize nearby troops. Some they avoided entirely, choosing easier targets. Every decision was tactical. Every action was calculated to create maximum chaos with minimum risk. The Zelak began to panic. Marcus could hear it in their communications on the frequencies he was monitoring. They could not understand how enemies had penetrated so deeply into their perimeter. They pulled soldiers away from the main assault to search for infiltrators. They sealed corridors and established checkpoints. They were doing exactly what Kimura had wanted, diverting resources and attention inward. Then Marcus's luck ran out. His team had just finished sabotaging a vehicle depot when they rounded a corner and came face to face with an entire Zelak patrol. 10 soldiers, all armed, all in heavy armor. For a moment, everyone froze. Then hell broke loose. The firefight was immediate and brutal. Rodriguez went down in the first seconds, hit in the shoulder by plasma fire. Jackson returned fire while dragging Rodriguez to cover. Marcus threw a grenade and dove behind a support pillar as the world exploded into noise and light. The fight lasted maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. When it was over, 6 Zelak were dead and the other 4 had retreated. But Rodriguez was badly wounded and they were now compromised. Every Zelak in the area would be converging on this position. "Go!" Rodriguez gasped, clutching his wounded shoulder. "I will slow you down." "No," Marcus said flatly. "No one gets left behind." "That is not practical," Rodriguez argued. "You can do more damage without carrying me." Marcus met his eyes. "I said no. Humans do not abandon our own. That is not negotiable." Jackson supported Rodriguez on one side while Marcus took the other. They moved as quickly as they could, but it was not fast enough. Behind them, they could hear the Zelak closing in. Ahead, the path to extraction was blocked by enemy checkpoints. They were trapped. Marcus found a defendable position in what looked like a storage room. He helped Jackson get Rodriguez situated behind cover, then checked his ammunition. He had 2 magazines left, maybe 60 shots total, not enough for a sustained fight against superior numbers. "This is not good," Jackson said, which was the understatement of the year. "No," Marcus agreed. He keyed his comm. "Team 2 to all teams. We are pinned in Sector 7, Grid Echo 5. We have wounded and limited ammunition. Could use assistance if anyone is available." Kimura's response came back immediately. "Team 1 is 20 minutes from your position. Team 3 is closer but engaged with heavy resistance. Can you hold?" Marcus looked at the approaching enemy positions on his tactical display. "We will hold. We are human. Holding terrible positions against impossible odds is what we do." What followed was the longest 20 minutes of Marcus's life. The Zelak attacked in waves, using their superior numbers and firepower. Marcus and Jackson fought back with careful, precise shots, making every bullet count. They used the room's layout, turning it into a killing ground. They used grenades strategically, not for kills, but to disrupt enemy advances. Rodriguez, despite his wound, provided covering fire with his sidearm. "I am not dead yet," he said through gritted teeth when Marcus tried to tell him to rest. "Humans fight until they cannot fight anymore. I can still pull a trigger." The Zelak commander made a mistake. Frustrated by the resistance, he sent his elite troops. They were larger, better armored, and more skilled than the regular soldiers. They were also overconfident. They charged the room expecting to overwhelm it through sheer force. Marcus and Jackson let them get close. Very close. Then they opened fire at point-blank range, aiming for joints and weak points.